I learned how to make paper boats when you were away. I learned during my math class, and I remember I spent the entire lesson tearing pages out of my notebooks and then very meticulously measuring them into squares, into triangles, into little paper boats, and then lining them up by the big classroom window. I thought of you, and how I'd call you in the evening and tell you all about it. I spent that monsoon without you. I went downstairs after school and tried to get my boats to float in the muddy water of the puddles. I thought of you, and how I'd call you in the evening and tell you all about it. But it's funny, these things never work out the way you expect them to. The paper, it soaked up all the water, and my boats, they sank before they got the chance to wander. But I didn't tell you that. We learned respiration in biology, and I wrote you a letter on blue paper. I tore it up into 4 equal parts so that you could keep one piece in each chamber of your heart. I thought that maybe every time you took a deep breath, you could break down the sentences into words, that you could convert each letter into energy that would come out through your nose and your mouth in your breath as I love yous. I was never very good at biology. I was just interested in matters of the heart. I folded those pieces into paper boats and I went downstairs after school that day. I sat by a puddle, that first monsoon I spent without you, and I tried to get my boats to float. Do you remember the monsoons? Where we took the wrong train and ended up somewhere we didn't know but was exactly where we wanted to be? Trying to get as lost as we possibly could because the longer it took us to find our way back, the more time we would get in each other's company. I remember. We fought and I walked away from you and I found myself by the sea. This city, it always brought us back to the sea. It brought me to you. It brought you to me. And we were always by the sea. The blue paper got darker as it sank. I put the boats in one by one after the other, and watched as they refused to put up a fight. They sank so quietly, as if it was always meant to be that way. I always knew when you'd come back for a visit because I'd be able to hear the city traffic in the background of your phone call. And you'd give me a sheepish laugh as you tried to keep up your lie, your small, frequent surprises. I'd jump up in my living room and I'd tell you that I was coming over and you'd say, okay. Okay. The beach. Sunset o'clock. I remember we walked to the right of the theater and not the left because walking left meant that my hair would come in front of my face and go into my mouth and I couldn't tie it up because you liked my hair when it was open. I remember. So we walked against the wind and I held my t-shirt down so that it wouldn't hug my stomach because I didn't want you to see any flaws. You liked thinking that I was this idea of perfection, this idea of what love should be. I remember. Do you? I like thinking that I was what you thought I was too, so I'd always sit a little straighter and take smaller bites. And when the street food that we ate so often was too spicy, I would will my nose not to run. I liked that we met in the evenings, because my face was less detailed in the fuzzy evening traffic light. Words also would get stuck in my throat a lot, because I thought they weren't interesting when they were halfway out, or I thought they weren't funny enough, and I didn't want to make a joke that you didn't laugh at. So maybe in some ways it was a good thing that you spent so much time away. Maybe otherwise the stress of keeping up with myself would have taken a toll on me. I always wrote you letters when you went away. Or when I went away. Or when we just felt alone in the same city. It's a big city and sometimes you do just feel lonely, even when you're holding hands. But remember this city. Orange streetlights and rainbow-colored rain. We'd run rampant in old jeans and dirty bathroom slippers. When you were gone again, the city would seem so much bigger than it had a few hours earlier. We were learning physics and I remember our teacher told us that the universe is constantly expanding, so it made sense. I told myself that when I went to the beach now, the horizon that looked as though it was slipping further and further away had nothing to do with me or my first experience with loneliness. It was just science. And even if it wasn't, it was something much bigger than I was. This is when the sunsets became fickle with time and the orange evening light began to look more like red warning signs, and I stopped going to the beach. My bedroom, 2 o'clock. You called and I was sleeping, but I always answered when you called and you always called when I was sleeping. I said hello. And you chewed on this silence that lasted for so long. It lasted too long. I listened to your breath and I could tell that my letters hadn't reached you. I wish that I'd swallowed them instead of trying to sail them to you so that you could smell them on my breath over the telephone, that pungent smell of fear and love. Not a good combination. When you said goodbye that night, I cried until the sun came up. I pulled out my history books and wrote out everything I'd missed in class because I wanted to distract myself from that twisting sensation in my lungs and throat. There was definitely a moment of fear in that early AM where I worried that I'd never be able to sleep again. That night, the walls of those 4 chambers of the heart were closing in on me. I wrote you one last letter, and it takes up the first 3 pages of a notebook I still use. I didn't tear it out, and I haven't looked at it in years. It's just there, pressed under the weight of words and doodles and reminders and this and that have accumulated over the years since. But you know, when I go to that theater now, the one by the beach, I always notice that the tickets come in squares. Actually, it's a longer slip of paper that the guard at the entrance rips in half, handing me a scrap with 4 equal sides. And when the house lights go out, and the conversation in the audience dies down, I fold that ticket 6 times and keep a paper boat by my feet. It gets a little battered sometimes. Sometimes I put them in my bag, but I like that they don't sink anymore. I'm not in school now, and I write a lot, but I've decided that I don't like love that's written in second person. Yet, here I am, almost face to face with you, even though neither of us is looking the right way. What's really stupid, though, is that I hope you never read this. I asked myself halfway through writing it why I was doing it, and I shrugged until I reached the end. Maybe it's because I've always written you letters and it's muscle memory now. Maybe it's because they say old habits die hard and you were my first habit.